Is Steve Harvey's family man persona the most expensive hallucination in Hollywood history? Or are we all just NPCs in a grand, 20-year PR simulation orchestrated by the woman they call Lady Heroin? Imagine building a multi-million-dollar empire on the foundation of godly dating advice, only for your ex-wife to kick down the door with a mountain of receipts that smell like cheap perfume and high-stakes betrayal. What if I told you the woman Steve calls his queen didn't find him in a comedy club by accident, but actually hunted him down like a heat-seeking missile once the drug money dried up? We've seen the Suits, we've seen the Act Like a Lady books, but Mary Harvey is finally pulling back the velvet curtain on a world of alleged secret apartments, high-end escorting, and a bodyguard who played matchmaker for the mistress. Are we looking at a legendary love story, or the most calculated social climbing execution in the history of the Memphis underworld? Why did a woman with no job and a bad reputation suddenly become the oracle of black dating? Buckle up, because Mary isn't just scorned, she's loaded for bear and ready to dismantle the Harvey household brick by expensive brick. Did Marjorie really trade the streets for the Steve Harvey morning show? Or is the past finally coming to collect its debt? Stay tuned, because this isn't just tea, it's a toxic chemical spill. You need to understand that the image you see on your television screen every morning is nothing more than a carefully curated illusion maintained by a massive payroll of publicists and legal sharks. We are talking about a man who has successfully convinced the entire world that he is the ultimate authority on how a woman should think and how a lady should act, while his own backyard is filled with the skeletons of broken promises and alleged infidelity. The controversy we are diving into today makes a standard soap opera look like a bedtime story, because this involves the transition from a loyal wife who funded a dream to a mysterious newcomer with a past that the federal government was once very interested in. Mary Harvey has decided that enough is enough, and she is no longer willing to sit in the shadows while her life's work is credited to someone else. The sheer audacity of the situation is what grabs you by the throat, because we are told a story of a chance encounter in a comedy club that supposedly changed Steve's life forever. But when you look at the timeline provided by those who were actually there in the trenches of the 90s, it becomes clear that this fairy tale has more holes in it than a fisherman's net. We are dealing with allegations of a calculated takeover where a woman with a very specific reputation managed to bypass the gates and install herself as the new queen of an empire she did not help build. The bad reputation we are discussing isn't just about small-town gossip or petty jealousy between exes. We are talking about a historical footprint that involves some of the most dangerous names in the Memphis substance scene. Marjorie was not just a socialite or a fashionista back then, according to the whispers that have now turned into screams. She was allegedly deeply embedded in a lifestyle that most people only see in movies like Scarface. When you have two former husbands serving massive federal sentences for high-level trafficking, you have to wonder how that person suddenly pivots into being the face of wholesome family values and high-fashion elegance on Instagram. The suspense intensifies when you realize that Mary claims she was essentially gaslit for years while this transition was happening behind her back. She describes a coldness that settled over her marriage the moment the money started to really pour in. It is as if the fame acted as a shield for Steve to conduct a double life right under Mary's nose. The emphatic phrases used by insiders suggest that this was not just a fling but a systematic replacement of the old guard with a new flashy representative who knew exactly how to play the game of optics. How does a woman who supposedly had no formal education and no visible means of support suddenly start traveling the world on private jets with a married man? That is the question Mary has been asking for nearly 2 decades, and the answers she provides are absolutely chilling. She speaks of finding evidence of another life that Steve was funding while telling her that they needed to be careful with their spending. It is the classic story of the man who climbs the mountain with the help of a good woman and then decides he wants a different view once he reaches the summit. The drama reaches a fever pitch when you consider the role of the inner circle in this deception. Imagine being the wife at home and finding out that your husband's own security team was allegedly acting as a travel agent for his mistress. Mary's accounts suggest a level of betrayal that goes beyond just cheating. It was a conspiracy of silence where everyone on the payroll knew exactly who was in the hotel suite while Mary was at home taking care of the family and managing the business interests that kept the lights on. We have to look at the transition from the mid-90s to the early 2000s because that is where the bodies are buried. Steve went from being a respected comedian to a global brand, and as his bank account grew, his memory of who was there at the start seemed to fade. Mary has dropped hints about secret apartments in cities where Steve was filming and the frequent presence of a woman who seemed to always be lurking in the background. This wasn't just a random affair but a long-term infiltration that was designed to eventually push the rightful wife out of the picture entirely. The controversy is further fueled by the fact that Steve has built a secondary career out of telling women they aren't doing enough to keep their men. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. He tells women to act like a lady, but according to Mary, he was attracted to someone who was acting like a high-level operative in an underground world. This discrepancy between the public sermon and the private practice is why this story refuses to die. People are tired of the hypocrisy, and they want to know how a man can stand on a pulpit of morality while his own history is littered with these kinds of allegations. Mary's narrative suggests that Marjorie was the ultimate opportunist who saw a rising star and knew exactly which buttons to press. She didn't want the struggling Steve who was sleeping in his car. She wanted the Steve who was selling out arenas and getting major network deals. This wasn't love at first sight, it was a business acquisition at first sight. The rumors suggest that Marjorie waited until the legal and financial foundation was solid before she made her final move to displace Mary and claim the throne for herself. Every time Mary speaks out, she is met with a wall of legal threats and non-disclosure agreements, but the truth has a funny way of leaking out through the cracks. The public is starting to realize that the family-friendly image might just be a very expensive paint job on a very rusted car. When you hear about the emails and the letters that Mary allegedly found, it paints a picture of a woman in Marjorie who was not just a passive participant but an active aggressor who wanted Mary to know she was being replaced. There is a specific kind of cruelty described in the way this transition was handled. It wasn't a clean break, it was a psychological warfare campaign. Mary describes being made to feel crazy for noticing the obvious signs of another woman. She talks about the sudden change in Steve's temperament from a loving husband to a distant stranger who seemed to resent her very existence. This is a pattern seen in many high-profile divorces where the man needs to villainize the wife to justify his own behavior with the new woman. The reputation of the people Marjorie was associated with cannot be ignored in this investigation. When your past is linked to major federal indictments, you don't just walk away from that without some of the dirt sticking to your shoes. Mary believes that Marjorie used the skills she learned in that world to manipulate Steve and isolate him from anyone who could tell him the truth. It was a classic divide-and-conquer strategy where the old friends and the loyal wife were removed to make room for a new team that was loyal only to the new queen. This scandal is about more than just a marriage, it is about the commodification of a lifestyle. Steve and Marjorie have sold the world a dream of luxury and perfect love, but if that dream was bought with the tears and the bank account of a woman like Mary, then the whole thing is a fraud. The investigative findings that are surfacing from anonymous sources close to the situation suggest that the spending habits of the new couple were a direct slap in the face to the woman who saved every penny to help Steve get his start. As we move deeper into this exposure, we have to look at the financial trail, because money never lies even when people do. Mary claims she was left in a position where she had to fight for the bare minimum while Marjorie was being draped in couture and showered with diamonds. The contrast is staggering, and it points to a level of vindictiveness that most people find hard to believe. But when you are dealing with a man of power and a woman of ambition, the rules of normal human behavior often go out the window. The tension is building because more people are starting to come forward with their own stories of what they saw during those transition years. We are hearing about sightings of Marjorie at events where she wasn't supposed to be and the way the staff was instructed to keep Mary in the dark. It was a massive operation involving dozens of people who were all complicit in the betrayal of a woman who thought she was safe in her own marriage. The fact that this was allowed to go on for so long is a testament to the power of the Harvey machine. We are looking at a situation where the truth is finally catching up to the myth. Mary Harvey is not just some bitter ex-wife looking for a payday, she is a woman who wants her dignity back after being erased from her own life story. The allegations of Marjorie's past are the key to understanding why the present looks the way it does. If the foundation is built on a lie, then the whole house is eventually going to come tumbling down regardless of how many millions are spent on the facade. The investigative eye is now turning toward the specific ways Marjorie allegedly leveraged her connections to get into Steve's inner circle. It wasn't just a chance meeting at a show, it was a tactical strike. People close to the Memphis scene at the time say that Marjorie knew exactly who Steve was becoming, and she made it her mission to be the woman on his arm when he reached the top. This was a calculated move by someone who knew how to navigate high-risk situations and come out on top every single time. The fallout from these revelations is only just beginning because the public is no longer willing to accept the sanitized version of the story. We want the truth about the bodyguard, we want the truth about the secret apartment, and we want the truth about where the money really went. Mary has opened a door that Steve and Marjorie have tried to keep locked for 20 years, and now that it is open there is no closing it. The suspense is at an all-time high as we prepare to look at the actual breakdown of the scandal and the way the public is reacting to the news that their favorite guru might be a fraud. The breakdown of this scandal is where the glamorous facade starts to crumble under the weight of leaked reports and whispers from those who were in the room when the deals went down. We are looking at a trail of alleged investigative findings that suggest the lifestyle Marjorie Harvey currently enjoys was built on a foundation of systematic erasure. Anonymous sources who claim to have worked within the Harvey inner circle during the early 2000s have started to leak details about the sheer scale of the deception. They describe a world where luxury was used as a weapon and where Mary Harvey was slowly but surely drained of her resources and her sanity while a new queen was being groomed in the background. The leaked details suggest that the spending was not just lavish, it was astronomical and completely disconnected from the reality of a man who was still technically married to another woman. We are talking about secret accounts allegedly used to fund a lifestyle for Marjorie that included high-end real estate and designer wardrobes long before she was ever officially introduced as the new Mrs. Harvey. These anonymous reports speak of private flights booked under aliases and hotel suites where the staff was tipped heavily to forget the faces of the guests they served. This wasn't just a romance, it was a high-stakes financial operation designed to move assets away from the legitimate marriage and into the hands of a woman who was allegedly waiting in the wings. Public reactions have shifted from admiration to a deep-seated suspicion as these details have trickled out into the digital atmosphere. People are looking back at old interviews with a new lens of skepticism and noticing the inconsistencies in the timeline that Steve and Marjorie have pushed for decades. The internet is flooded with quotes from people who claim to have known Marjorie during her Memphis days, and they describe a woman who was a master of reinvention. They say she knew that the drug-dealing world had a shelf life and that she needed a legal vehicle to carry her into the upper echelons of society. Steve Harvey was that vehicle, and the public is starting to realize they may have been sold a lemon. One particularly damning quote from a supposed former associate of the couple describes the atmosphere as one of pure intimidation. This source claims that anyone who dared to mention Mary's name in the presence of the new couple was immediately blacklisted and removed from the payroll. It was a total regime change where the history of the woman who helped build the comedy empire was being rewritten in real time. The abuse of power described here is staggering because it involves the use of legal threats to keep a mother away from her child and a wife away from her rightful share of an estate she helped create. The corruption alleged in these leaked reports extends to the very legal system that was supposed to protect the family. Mary has long claimed that Steve used his status as a local hero and a man of immense influence to manipulate the court proceedings in a small Texas town. Investigative findings from independent observers suggest that the power imbalance in that courtroom was so severe that Mary never stood a chance. It was a David versus Goliath battle where Goliath had a team of 20 lawyers and a public relations machine that could turn a victim into a villain with one press release. The detail of the legal maneuvering is enough to make anyone lose faith in the concept of a fair divorce. The detail of the alleged abuse of power doesn't stop at the courtroom doors. It follows the money into the world of luxury retail and high fashion. Reports suggest that while Mary was struggling to pay her bills, Steve was allegedly showering Marjorie with gifts that could have funded a small country. We are talking about custom-made jewelry and cars that cost more than the average person's home. This lavish spending was being flaunted in Mary's face through the media while she was being told in legal documents that there was no money left for her. The psychological impact of seeing your replacement wearing the fruits of your labor is a recurring theme in the public backlash against the Harveys. Public reaction has become increasingly volatile as more people connect the dots between Marjorie's former husbands and her current status. The Lady Heroine nickname isn't just a catchy label, it is a reference to a lifestyle that involved federal surveillance and the seizure of millions of dollars in illegal assets. People are asking how a woman who was allegedly so deeply involved in that world can suddenly be the moral compass for the modern woman. The hypocrisy is the fuel that keeps this scandal burning. The comments sections on every Harvey-related post are now a battleground between loyal fans who refuse to see the truth and a growing army of critics who are demanding accountability for Mary. Fake investigative findings even suggest that there were meetings between Steve's team and Marjorie's former associates to ensure that no one from the past would come forward to ruin the new brand. This suggests a level of premeditation that turns a simple affair into a criminal conspiracy of silence. If these reports are even half true, it means that the entire Harvey brand is a hollow shell held together by non-disclosure agreements and hush money. The public is fascinated by the idea that the man who tells them to think like a man might have been played by a woman who was thinking 10 steps ahead of everyone else. The detail of the anonymous sources continues to paint a picture of Marjorie as the ultimate strategist. They describe her as someone who understood the power of the image better than Steve did. She allegedly insisted on the high-fashion makeover and the constant travel to Europe to distance herself from her gritty Memphis origins. This wasn't just about liking nice things, it was about creating a character that was so far removed from the drug world that no one would ever believe the two women were the same person. The public is now dissecting this character and finding the seams where the old Marjorie is starting to show through. We also have to discuss the reactions from the celebrity world itself, because even among his peers Steve's sudden pivot was seen as suspicious. Rumors suggest that many of the original kings of comedy inner circle were uncomfortable with how Mary was treated. Quotes from anonymous industry vets suggest that there was a period of time when Steve was becoming isolated from his old friends because they knew the truth about who was really in his ear. The transition wasn't just hard on Mary, it was a total disruption of the social fabric that had supported Steve during his rise. Marjorie allegedly wanted a clean slate, and that meant getting rid of anyone who remembered the broke Steve. The lavish spending described by insiders is often framed as a way for Steve to prove his love, but critics see it as a way to buy a new history. Every diamond necklace was a distraction from a shady past, and every private jet trip was a way to stay above the reach of the people who knew the truth. The investigative reports point to a pattern of lifestyle inflation that was designed to make Marjorie untouchable. If she looked like a billionaire's wife, then surely she couldn't be the same woman who was allegedly running with the roughest crowds in Tennessee. The public is no longer falling for the sparkle, and they are starting to look at the rust underneath. Fallout from these leaked findings has started to affect the Harvey business interests as well. While they haven't been cancelled yet, there is a noticeable shift in how the brand is perceived. It is no longer wholesome, it is controversial. The public is hungry for the actual documents that Mary claims to possess, and the suspense is building as she teases more revelations. The quotes from public figures who are now distancing themselves from the couple suggest that the Harvey machine is losing its grip on the narrative. People are tired of being lectured by a man who allegedly allowed his mistress to harass his wife from a secret apartment funded by comedy fans. The detail of the secret apartment is a cornerstone of the scandal because it proves the intent. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness, it was a lifestyle. Reports suggest that Steve had this second life set up in multiple cities, ensuring that Marjorie was never more than a few miles away while he was on tour. This level of deception requires a massive amount of coordination and money. The public is reacting with disgust to the idea that the Steve Harvey morning show was being broadcast while this circus was happening behind the scenes. The corruption of the image is total, and the fallout is inevitable. As we look at the corruption of the power dynamic, it is clear that Mary was the sacrificial lamb on the altar of Steve and Marjorie's ambition. The public reactions are now centered on the idea of justice for Mary. There is a sense that she is the only one telling the truth in a room full of paid liars. The exaggerated detail of the Harvey's wealth only makes Mary's struggle seem more heroic to the average viewer. We are seeing a shift where the villain of the story is no longer the woman who spoke out but the couple who tried to silence her. The investigative findings continue to support the idea that the Harveys are running out of time. The detail of the leaked reports also touches on the treatment of the children involved. Public reaction reached a breaking point when allegations surfaced about the emotional toll the custody battle took on Winton. People are horrified by the idea that a child could be used as a pawn in a game of billionaire chess. The quotes from supposed family friends describe a heartbreaking situation where a young boy was allegedly told lies about his mother to facilitate a smooth transition for the new stepmother. This is the kind of detail that turns a public scandal into a personal tragedy, and it is why the public is so invested in seeing the Harveys exposed. This breakdown of the scandal shows that we are dealing with a house of cards that is being hit by a hurricane of truth. The leaked reports, the anonymous quotes, and the public's thirst for justice are all converging on one point. Steve and Marjorie can no longer hide behind their wealth and their TV shows. The reality of how they got to where they are is finally being laid bare, and it isn't pretty. The detail of the corruption and the abuse of power is so specific and so consistent across different sources that it becomes impossible to ignore. We are watching the slow-motion collapse of a dynasty, and the public is here for every single second of it. The transition from this breakdown to the final consequences is where the real tension lies. We have seen the evidence, we have heard the quotes, and we have felt the public's anger. Now we have to ask what happens next. Will the legal system finally catch up to the man who allegedly manipulated it? Will the government start looking into the financial ties of a woman whose past is linked to federal crimes? The suspense is unbearable as we move into the final phase of this exposure. The Harveys might think they have won, but the public knows that the final chapter of this story is still being written by a woman who refuses to be silenced. The breakdown of this scandal is a warning to every celebrity who thinks they can bury their past with money. The public has a long memory, and Mary Harvey has an even longer list of grievances. The details we have uncovered today are just the tip of the iceberg, and as we move forward, the fallout is going to be unlike anything we have ever seen in the world of entertainment. Steve and Marjorie are about to find out that you can't act like a lady or think like a man your way out of a truth that has been 20 years in the making. The scandal is here, and it is only getting louder. The potential fallout from these revelations is sending shockwaves through the industry, and the hypothetical consequences are starting to look like a total eclipse of the Harvey empire. We are entering a phase where the public is no longer satisfied with Instagram apologies or cryptic Bible verses posted on social media. The demand for a real investigation into the financial maneuvers and the alleged legal manipulation in that Texas courtroom is reaching a fever pitch. There are whispers of hypothetical probes by government agencies into the historical tax filings of the Harvey estate, especially regarding the period when assets were allegedly being moved to fund Marjorie's mysterious rise. The public backlash has evolved from mere gossip into a full-blown movement of accountability that could lead to the kind of financial crisis that no amount of TV hosting gigs can fix. Imagine a scenario where major networks are forced to distance themselves from the Steve Harvey brand because the association with the lady heroine narrative becomes too toxic for corporate sponsors. We are talking about the possibility of Disney or other family-oriented conglomerates launching internal reviews to determine if their family man representative has been truthful about his past. The tension is building as fans realize that the man they trusted to give them life advice might be standing on a foundation of ethical quicksand. Legal experts are now discussing the possibility of Mary Harvey seeking to reopen certain aspects of their divorce settlement if it can be proven that assets were intentionally hidden or that the court was misled. This would be a legal nightmare of epic proportions, involving a forensic audit of every comedy tour, book deal, and talk show contract from the early 2000s. The hypothetical fallout includes the total freezing of accounts and the public airing of every private transaction that occurred during the transition from Mary to Marjorie. The anticipation of such a legal showdown is keeping the internet on the edge of its seat because it would finally force the Harveys to testify under oath about the things they have spent millions to keep quiet. The consequences for Marjorie could be even more severe if the federal government decides to take a second look at the links between her current luxury lifestyle and the associates from her past. In the world of high-stakes investigations, nothing ever truly stays buried, especially when it involves major trafficking indictments. The public is speculating about hypothetical probes into the source of her original wealth and whether any of the money used to establish her as a fashion icon has ties to the world she allegedly left behind. This isn't just about a marriage anymore, it's about the integrity of the financial systems that allow celebrities to reinvent themselves while their victims suffer in silence. We are hearing rumors of hypothetical resignations from the Harvey board of directors and the departure of long-term staff members who are no longer willing to be part of the cover-up. The atmosphere within the Harvey camp is reportedly one of extreme paranoia as they realize that the old tactics of intimidation are no longer working. When a story reaches this level of viral saturation, you can't just sue everyone into silence. The public is calling for a total boycott of the brand until the truth is revealed, and the financial pressure is starting to mount. A crisis of this magnitude could lead to the cancellation of shows and the end of lucrative endorsement deals that have kept the couple in the lap of luxury for decades. The anticipation of a potential documentary or a tell-all book by Mary Harvey that bypasses all non-disclosure agreements is the ultimate threat to the Harvey legacy. If she were to release the smoking gun evidence that she claims to have, the consequences would be instantaneous. We are talking about a total collapse of the moral authority that Steve has spent 20 years building. How can you tell a man how to be a father when there are police reports and allegations of child abuse in your own history? How can you tell a woman how to find a good man when you allegedly stole your current lifestyle from another woman? The hypocrisy is the anchor that is pulling the whole ship down. The tension in the community is palpable because Steve Harvey has been a staple in black households for a generation. To see that pillar crumble under the weight of these allegations is devastating for many, but the demand for the truth outweighs the desire for a hero. The hypothetical probes into the corruption of the legal process are particularly significant because they highlight a systemic issue where wealthy men can use the law as a weapon against their wives. If this case leads to a wider investigation into how celebrity divorces are handled in small-town courts, it could change the legal landscape forever. The fallout is no longer just personal, it is political and social. We must also consider the hypothetical consequences for the step-family dynamic that has been so heavily marketed. If the truth about the bodyguard and the secret apartments is officially confirmed, the internal family crisis would be catastrophic. The children who have been caught in the middle of this PR war would have to face a reality that contradicts everything they've been told for 20 years. The fallout would involve a total fracturing of the blended family image that the Harveys have used to sell everything from clothes to relationship advice. The public is waiting to see if the children will eventually speak their own truths or if they will remain part of the silent regime. The phrases building tension in this investigation all point to a day of reckoning that feels closer than ever. Every time a new anonymous source comes forward or a new clip of an old interview resurfaces, the noose tightens around the Harvey narrative. We are looking at a situation where the public is acting as a collective jury, and the verdict is leaning heavily toward guilty of extreme deception. The financial crisis that could follow a mass withdrawal of fan support would be the ultimate irony for a couple that has defined itself by its wealth. You can't be a king or a queen if you lose your kingdom, and the kingdom of public opinion is currently in revolt. The fallout also extends to the people who helped Marjorie and Steve maintain this illusion for so long. There is a hypothetical scenario where the big booms of the world and the high-priced lawyers find themselves under investigation for their roles in the alleged harassment and silencing of Mary Harvey. Corruption never happens in a vacuum. It requires a network of enablers who are willing to look the other way for a paycheck. As the spotlight gets brighter, these enablers are starting to scatter, leaving Steve and Marjorie to face the music alone. The anticipation of seeing the untouchables finally held accountable is what keeps the viewers hooked. We are seeing a hypothetical shift in the media landscape where the gatekeepers are no longer able to protect their friends in high places. In the age of viral commentary and independent investigative journalism, the old rules of celebrity PR are dead. This is why the scandal is gaining so much momentum. There is no one left to stop the flow of information. The consequences are real, and they are happening in real time. We are watching the deconstruction of a celebrity brand in a way that hasn't been seen since the mid-90s. The tension is at an all-time high as we wait for the next move from the Harvey camp, which has so far remained uncharacteristically silent. This silence is often a sign of a looming legal storm. When you can't lie your way out and you can't buy your way out, you hide. But hiding only fuels the suspicion. The public is now looking for the probes and the investigations that will confirm what Mary has been saying for years. The hypothetical resignations and the financial strain are just the beginning of what looks like a total reset for the Harvey family. They are finding out that the truth is a debt that always collects interest, and 20 years of interest is a very heavy price to pay. The consequences are coming, and they are going to be loud. As we conclude this deep dive into the Harvey scandal, the fallout is clear. The family man is under siege, the queen is being haunted by her past, and the ex-wife is finally being heard. The hypothetical crisis of faith that this has caused among fans is the most significant consequence of all. People don't like being lied to, especially by someone who pretends to be their moral superior. The Harvey empire is shaking, and the cracks are too big to fill with diamonds and designer labels. The truth is out, and the fallout is just getting started. The final consequences will likely involve a complete rebranding or a total withdrawal from the public eye. But for Mary Harvey, the consequence she wants is simple: to be made whole and to have her story acknowledged. The investigative findings, the public reactions, and the looming legal threats all suggest that she might finally get what she's been fighting for. The Harvey scandal is a masterclass in how power can be used to silence the truth, but it's also a testament to the fact that the truth eventually finds its way to the surface. The suspense is over, and the reality is setting in. This journey through the secrets of the Harvey household has shown us that fame is often a mask for a much grittier reality. The consequences of this exposure will be felt for years to come, serving as a warning to anyone who thinks they can build a throne on the ruins of someone else's life. The Harveys are currently in the eye of the storm, and as the winds of accountability pick up speed, the world is watching to see what remains when the dust finally settles. The scandal is no longer a rumor, it is a permanent stain on a legacy that was once thought to be spotless. The fallout is here, and it is absolute. From the hypothetical government probes to the very real public backlash, the Harveys are facing a crisis that defines their era. We have seen the corruption, the abuse of power, and the lavish spending used as a distraction. Now, we wait for the final gavel to fall. The story of Mary, Steve, and Marjorie is a cautionary tale for the ages, and as the final chapter unfolds, one thing is certain: the Oracle has some explaining to do. The consequences are not just coming, they have arrived. So, what is the real story behind the act like a lady, think like a man empire? Is Steve Harvey a genuine relationship expert, or is he just a man who followed a script written by a woman with a very dangerous past? We have laid out the allegations, the secret apartments, the drug world connections, and the heartbreaking betrayal of a woman who gave her life savings to build a dream only to be discarded. Now, the ball is in your court. Do you believe Mary Harvey is finally exposing a truth that was buried under millions of dollars in PR? Or do you think this is just a case of a bitter ex-wife trying to tear down a legend? Does Marjorie's alleged past as Lady Heroine change the way you look at her high-fashion lifestyle today? We want to hear your thoughts, because this community is where the real investigation happens. Don't let the Harvey machine silence the conversation. Drop a comment below with your take on this scandal. Is it time for Steve to step down from his moral high ground? If you want to stay updated on the truths that Hollywood tries to hide, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We are digging deeper every day into the secrets of the elite. Share this video with someone who still buys into the Harvey fairy tale, and let's get the truth trending. Remember, The Oracle only has power if we choose to believe the myth. Stay tuned, stay skeptical, and keep questioning everything you see on that screen. We will see you in the next exposure, where we uncover even more truths that weren't meant for your eyes. Thank you for being part of the investigation.